If you're in a relationship with an Enneagram 5, then the first thing you should know is that their ego is constantly telling them that they're only safe if they have all the resources necessary to survive on their own. That's a pretty tough ego message to deal with if you're looking for an intimate relationship with a 5, but it doesn't mean that they can't make fantastic husbands, wives, fathers, or mothers. So if there's an Enneagram 5 out there that's near and dear to your heart, then here are the 5 key themes you'll need to know about how they handle relationships. First up is evading emotion. Second is commitment triggers emotion. Third, retreat and recharge. Fourth, privacy is paramount. And fifth, security means clarity. Okay, that's our roadmap. You ready? Let's get into it. The first relationship theme for Enneagram 5s is perhaps the most obvious theme, which is their tendency to evade emotion. I choose the word evade rather than avoid specifically because evade carries a connotation of cleverness, like the way a politician evades giving a direct answer on a controversial topic. 5s actually don't avoid their own emotions, and in fact, they use their emotions all the time to get energized about their ideas. When you look at the 5's triadic pattern, it goes head, heart, then gut. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I did a whole video on the triad itself that's linked in the description below. But the short explanation of it is that 5s are primarily influenced by the logic of the head center, which they fuel with the emotions of the heart center, and then kind of neglect the physical movement or instincts of the gut center. 5s get stereotyped as robotic since they're so obsessed with objectivity and rationality, but that's because emotions exhaust them physically, not because they don't feel them. Now, because of this, average 5s are the least likely Enneagram type to get married, and the most likely to have some stormy or distant relationships because emotional intimacy just doesn't follow a set of rules or logical patterns that they can easily solve or predict. 5s only feel truly relaxed around people that can contain their emotions, and they refuse to get involved with anyone's emotional drama no matter how much the 5 loves them. If their partner starts getting overly emotional, like even in a super positive lovey-dovey way, the average 5's immediate thought is that these emotions are being used to try and control or manipulate them. If 5s get any whiff of emotional instability, they start detaching from their partner and become surprisingly cold or aloof until things settle back down. Now, healthy 5s do have their ways of expressing and embracing emotional intimacy, and more often than not, it's in non-verbal ways. Physical intimacy tends to be huge for healthy 5s because it gets them into their bodies, which is a crucial habit to balance all of their mental and emotional activity. Sex is also just a nice container for intimacy because it has a clear time frame. Can't last forever, and for some it doesn't last that long at all. Speaking of ending too soon, it's time for our next theme, which is that commitment triggers emotion. If you've endeared yourself enough to a 5 for them to use the L word, one of their subconscious reactions is often to get a bit upset about it. 5s in love feel like you've somehow caused them to take a piece of themselves and put it outside the safety of their castle walls, which, to be fair, is what love does. All long-term commitment upsets the holy independence and objectivity of the 5, and a loving commitment is perhaps the most tricky aspect of a 5's entire existence as it pulls all of their emotions to the surface. However, once you've gotten a 5 to stop evading their emotions and enter into a loving relationship, they're some of the most committed people you could ever hope for. For 5s, falling in love feels like climbing the most dangerous, exhausting mountain in the world, and if that relationship were to end, they'd have to climb a whole nother mountain all over again with a new person, and that's just not gonna happen. They'd rather give up climbing altogether than do that shit again. Now, 5s, especially with a 6 wing, can be super loyal to their partner because that person has become their main contact or connection with the outside world. It's easier to see with like a mom who does all of her son's laundry, cooks him food, and pays the bills, all while he sits in his room and plays video games all day. There are actually tons of Type 5 marriages with this exact same dynamic. That's why it's important for every Type 5 relationship to have some conflict. If 5s are too comfortable in their own world, then they start emotionally detaching from their lover, and it stops being a true commitment and instead devolves into this cold, platonic survival pact. Conflict is a major way 5s prove that they're still emotionally committed to the relationship, especially because it's so easy for them to rationalize the old Irish goodbye. Fives really don't like to tip their hand and expose the fact that they value or even need their partner. So any angry outburst is actually a signal that they at least value the relationship in some way. When fives don't care about something, they either coldly dismiss it or calmly play the devil's advocate just to get a rise out of you. To sum it all up, emotion reveals commitment as much as commitment triggers emotion. Okay, with that said, it's time for our next theme, which is the fives pattern of retreating to recharge. If you live with a five, then you know how they retreat into themselves after they've spent any significant energy interacting with the outside world. As I've said in the previous two themes, fives are not emotionless robots. They feel deeply. They just don't trust those feelings, and so they need to be alone to evaluate how they feel about whatever interactions they've just had. Fives are natural strategists, but their emotions feel like this earthquake shaking the chessboard, so they gotta rein all that in before they can make their next move. Fives also tend to have a very limited social gas tank, so the moment they step out into the real world, that gas tank starts to drain. Every interaction with a stranger, boom, quarter of a tank goes away. Walking into a party with loud music and no way to drive yourself home, boom, half tank gone. An elegant, thoughtful person tees up a conversation about the environmental impact of cobalt mining for electric vehicles? Okay, gas tank stabilizing. Maybe even going back up a quarter of a tank. If fives can keep their interactions purely within the intellectual sphere of their unique interests, then they can go for days without needing to recharge because that feels like being plugged directly into the wall. Although these days, that kind of interaction seems to exist primarily online, which is where many fives find their preferred relational playground. But when it comes to an intimate relationship with a physically present partner, fives have a consistent need to withdraw that should not be taken personally. It doesn't mean they want you to leave, they just can't have any more attention focused on them right now. If a five's partner starts to pester, hover, or shame them for withdrawing, they just dig in even deeper. In general, if you pressure a five to do something they don't want to do, you'll quickly find out that they are some of the most obstinate, stubborn folks you will ever meet. Fives almost always need more time to recharge than their partners think they should need. So just try your best to give them a wide berth as they sort out all their feelings and try to recharge that cobalt-fueled battery they've got. Call back! All right, time for our next theme, which is the five's need for privacy. No matter how intimately connected you are with a five, they will always have a private little world inside of themselves. They may reveal glimpses of that world to their closest friends and family or anonymously online, but that inner world is sacred ground for fives because to them, it feels like the real me. As long as fives feel content with their private inner world, they feel like no one coming or going can hurt them. The five's core sin, if you will, is often called avarice because they're driven to keep their most precious resources hidden from the outside world. But that makes having a family pretty tricky because if you love your children, you can't keep them hidden from the world forever. Even as parents, fives tend to pass on this message of, hey, don't need me too much because you shouldn't need anything that's outside of yourself. Privacy and autonomy very much go hand in hand for fives, so their ideal relationship should have both. It can be super off-putting for the five's partner the first time they get hit with the privacy policy because it feels so blunt. It usually sounds something like a curt, one or two word response when asked about their day or where they went last night. I went out. Did you have fun? Yeah. If you've seen Ozark, I feel like Jason Bateman's character, Marty Byrde, does this perfectly throughout the show. Granted, he's hiding a major money laundering scheme for the Mexican drug cartel, so his privacy really is a matter of life and death, but that's the way it feels for many fives. Where this attempt at privacy usually goes off the rails is in the five's obsession with secrecy. So the general pattern goes, healthy privacy leads to autonomy, and unhealthy secrecy leads to isolation. Fives tend to feel very safe when they're isolated, but they're not immune to loneliness. And the more they feel sad or lonely, the more fives try to funnel those emotions into the world of esoteric ideas and even some conspiracy theories, all of which just distorts their perception of reality. At the end of the day, healthy fives stay grounded by letting one or two trusted loved ones into that secret little world of theirs so they can co-create an environment together where they both feel secure enough to let their imagination run wild, all while keeping one foot firmly planted in the real world. Okay, speaking of feeling secure, it's time for our fifth and final theme, which is all about the five's need for clarity. Okay, before I get started on this theme, I want to emphasize the difference between clarity and certainty. Fives are actually great with a lack of certainty. They don't mind handling complex questions about the future, and in fact, that's where they do some of their best work. What fives actually need is clarity about where there is a lack of certainty. They need to know where the problem is and what specific role they play in fixing or improving things so they can either opt in or opt out. This goes all the way back to their childhood when it felt like mom and dad just didn't create a clear role for them in the family. Oftentimes there was a dramatic or unsafe environment in the home, and so the fives' needs were put on the back burner and or their gifts were just totally ignored. Eventually, fives accept this reality and make this subconscious agreement with their parents that says, okay, I won't ask too much from you if you don't ask too much from me. Fast forward to their relationships as a grown-up, and they're still kind of looking for the clarity this arrangement creates. Fives need clear, consistent boundaries, and if you have any intentions for the future of the relationship, then they must be clearly stated with no gray areas or hidden agenda. Fives that feel unclear about the future of their romantic relationship stall. They try to buy time because emotional decisions create a mental fog that leads to a sort of analysis paralysis. In order to get clear, the sad reality is that most fives turn their partners into objects rather than people because it's easier to make a big decision if you don't factor in emotion, empathy, or any sense of culpability for someone else's future. Fives like to think that we're all just free people doing whatever we want, so it's really on you if you want to stay in the relationship where you're not getting what you need. Now, that's the low side of the type 5's pursuit of clarity, but on the high side, they actually embody the bold, passionate convictions of the type 8 challenger during their movement of integration. This is a pretty dramatic shift for fives as they go from looking cold, scattered, awkward, or detached to looking intensely present and clear about who they are, what they want, and how to improve the relationship. Ultimately, fives are highly strategic thinkers that just need to know where they stand and what you expect from them in the relationship so they can put that brilliant mind to practical use. All right, those are the 5 themes of relationships with type 5 investigators. Just one last fun bonus topic for those that are interested in the 5's preferred love language. As a refresher, the 5 love languages are quality time, acts of service, gifts, physical touch, and words of affirmation. For 5s, I would say that quality time and acts of service are probably near the top. Quality time because 5s value pockets of thoughtful intellectual conversation mixed with plenty of alone time, and then acts of service because it allows 5s to neglect mundane tasks that they don't think are as valuable as their intellectual pursuits. At the bottom would probably be physical touch and gifts. Touch is low just because being present in the body is the opposite of being present in the mind, and gifts are low because 5s tend to do so much research about the things that they really want that it's almost impossible to buy them the exact right thing that they would have bought themselves. But hey, if you're a 5 and you disagree, let me know in the comments below, as I'm sure you were already gonna do. I know my 5s love the comment section, and I love you for it. Okay, folks, that's a wrap on this overview of the Type 5 Investigators' general relationship themes. I've got videos on each Enneagram relationship pairing for Type 5s coming out next, plus overviews on every other Enneagram type's relationship themes as well. So do me a favor and hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any of the new episodes as they become available. I thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm your host, Colton Simmons, and I'll see you next time on You've Got a Type.